I'm joined here on the Celtic Exchange this afternoon by Matt McGlone. Matt McGlone is known to many as one of several figures who drove Celts For Change back in 1994, as we saw regime change at Celtic. They say the more things change, the more things stay the same, but don't worry, we're not here to promote Celts For Change 2025, or at least not through Matt. It's not something that he'll be doing at this moment in time, but we were speaking to Matt this afternoon about a separate project, about a Jim Craig statue project, which is an amazing thing in itself. But we thought it would be remiss not to have a chat with Matt about the current situation at Celtic Park and what's going on, and about the anger and the unrest amongst fans, particularly in recent days, Matt, as the transfer window, the catastrophe of a transfer window took place. We fell out of Europe the week prior, and things have hit the fan. And do you see similarities, Matt, between now and 30-odd years ago?
Well, it was a different situation 30-odd years ago. 30-odd years ago, the club had no money. The club were going out of business. That's a proven fact. Until Fergus McCann stepped in, and then with John Keane and various other people, he refurbished the club financially. So it's a completely different situation. What is the same is the anger and the rage and the emotional attachment that people have to Celtic. And why they're so emotionally attached to Celtic is why they're so angry. Because the club have got reservoirs of money. Things couldn't be better, well, prior to now, as far as winning things, and we did progress in Europe last year. But we suddenly go into reverse gear and we disappoint the people that feed us, the support. That I find astonishing. I don't know how any other company can run like that. The problem that you and I and tens of thousands of other Celtic fans have is we're emotionally tied in. So we will buy the strips, we'll buy the new training gear, we'll buy everything every year, we'll buy the season tickets, we'll buy the pies, bovrils, the rock hard pizzas. We'll do all these things. But we're doing this because we're devoted to you being Celtic. We're doing this because we love you. We are committed to you. But don't treat us like an old lover. Don't talk to us in a different way. Don't treat us in a different way. And that's where the anger is just now. Fans are giving, but not getting. If you or I walk into a shop and we buy that jacket there, if that jacket's 50 quid, we get a 50 quid jacket back. We're giving money to Celtic and getting a substandard jacket back. We're getting a jacket all frayed with no arms in it. You know,
give or take.
An off the tongue analogy. So what we're doing is we're supporting the club. We're here, we love you. We want things to stay the same and continue building. But they're not, and I've got a reason I think why that is.
Okay, and I'll get that from you in just a second. You spoke about the fans and everything the fans do. My brother James from the show here, his big point recently has been that in football, not just at Celtic, in football in general, there's an unwritten two-way agreement where the fans, as you say, Matt, buy the season tickets, buy the merchandise, buys the bottles, all that kind of thing. They do their bit. I heard one fan talk about the fact that he spent best part of $1,000 already this season, or it will be when he buys his Europa package. So nearly 700 for season ticket. It'll be 160-ish for Europa. He's bought a ticket for a friendly against Newcastle and a cup game against Falkirk, and before you know it, you're heading towards $1,000. And he's meeting his end of the bargain, as are thousands, tens of thousands of others. But the club aren't doing their bit. So the unwritten agreement, or the unspoken agreement, is fans will do their thing, and the club's thing is to support the manager and put the best possible product on the park and give the club the best possible chance of success. And there is no doubt at this moment in time, Celtic aren't doing that. Why are they not doing it?
Well, I think this is my theory, and it's a theory I've got myself. Just by reading the room and looking at what's happening here, and how could somebody possibly sort of run a business? It's a business. Run a club stroke business down like this when all things are going well. There's 12 months left, or less than that, of Brendan's contract. And he said, as well, we're at the press conference, I'll be here for 3 years.
Yep.
And I think his words were, unless I get the Dan Mac.
Yep.
I hadn't heard that phrase for quite a while. He's been in Leicester for 4 years. Somebody must have told him when he came up. So he's here for the 3 years, and this is his final year. The press have constantly been asking him, are you staying beyond? Are you staying beyond? Now, if we look at the basics here, Manager, running the club, seems to be doing quite well, although of late in the last 8 or 9 months, he's not winning big games. Had you stay in? So the club have a decision to make. Brendan himself admitted they've had conversations but those conversations seemed to me, when he spoke about them, were just a chat, exploratory. I don't think the Celtic board want to give Brendan a new contract. If they gave him a new contract for 3 years, that'd be 9 years at Celtic, albeit a couple of months. I don't think that that's what the club want. Now, if that is the case, or maybe it's the case that he said to him, I'm not staying. And they're going, well, why would we give you 30 odd million last year for Trusty, Ingles, Ida, Yang, and Bernardo? Why would we give you that again if you're going to walk out the door? So there you have a schism. And what I think's developed here is a battle of wills between the manager and the board, and it's getting played out in public. The big problem is that we, the fans, are in the middle. And that's what I think the problem is here. Now, if you know, keep going back to the emotional attachment to Celtic, because that's where most of the money comes from. And, running a business, like a supermarket, a price of something in that supermarket is lower because there's 5 other supermarkets selling the same product. So it keeps the price of that product lower. But we are in one supermarket, the Celtic supermarket, where we love the club, and they are basically, use a Glasgow phrase, gees, money, but not giving back. And that's where the anger and the angst is coming from right now.
Yeah, it's the ultimate monopoly, isn't it? It's not like you're going to go to Celtic Park one week and then take yourself off to Thistle the next, and then go and watch Petershill or any other club around Glasgow. You're Celtic, and that's it. And that's how they get you. That's the stranglehold. And it'd be easy for a neutral or a non-sports fan or a non-football fan to say, well, why don't you just walk away from that and spend your Saturdays going for walks in the park and going to the cinema?
There's nowhere to go.
Exactly that. They've kind of got you there. Matt, you've indicated that you think it is an issue, a fallout between the manager and the board, and that the fans are caught somewhere in the mess of all that. Let me ask you specifically, is it, in your opinion, the manager and the board being the chairman and Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay and all of these characters, these figures, or do you think it's more directly with Dermot Desmond, who, by all accounts, calls all the shots at Celtic Park?
Well, we know what Dermot's influence is. We know the board are there, and we know who gives the biggest influence. So as a collective, that will be every day. I don't think it's a personal situation. But my problem here is whether Brendan's told them he's not staying and they say, we're not giving you money, or they're saying, we're not keeping you, we're looking for a new direction. The problem is here, it is not Brendan's job to run the club. Mm-hmm. It's Brendan's job to run the team. It's the board's job, or the PLC, or if you want to say Dermot Desmond, or a collective of of that hierarchy. It's their job to run the club. So if that is a schism there, either doesn't want to stay or we don't want you, the club have to run it and say, well, this is what we're going to do. This can't fester on till next May. Mm-hmm. You can imagine every single press conference he's staying and going until something comes out. The goodwill and welfare of the club must be get money in to buy players and get a manager in who's going to be here longer term than 8 months. That's what the board have got to do, and that's what they're not doing. That's the problem here.
My big issue is that they've contracted Brendan Rodgers to come in and do the job for 3 years, but it looks like, and it's not just hearsay now, the window has closed, so you can look at what's happened there and suggest that they've backed him for 2 of his 3 years, and you could question the signings that were there when he arrived, by the way, but let's just say they've backed him for year 1 and year 2 of his 3-year contract. They are quite brazenly, quite publicly not backing him, or certainly not backing him in the right way for this 3rd season. So he is therefore having to do the job tied behind his back. They are allowing him to do 66% of his contract well, and they're now saying for year 3, you're on your own. It feels like he's isolated all of a sudden. Brendan Rodgers is generally speaking, a popular character around Celtic Park, very respected in terms of what he brings as a coach, albeit, as you say, he's maybe struggled to motivate maybe himself as well as some of the players in the last 7, 8, 9 months. But he is cutting a more and more isolated figure with each passing week, with each passing interview. As you say, every game he's up for press pre and post match. and he's constantly been asked questions that shouldn't be his to answer. He's having to be the spokesperson for the whole club, and it's not fair and it's not right, but it is what it is. And it looks to me from the outside looking in that he's been cut adrift for some reason, and that is amateur hour. You can't operate a multi-million pound football club / business like Celtic in the way that we're currently doing.
Whether as Celtic fans we think Brendan's the right man for Celtic, it's a separate issue here. The issue is there's a void. There's a void between the manager and he's being left with the bare bones and told to win everything you can. Go and win the League Cup, Scottish Cup, the SPFL. Go and win that. Try and do as best as you can in Europe. And there's what we've given you. Now, that doesn't work out. Things don't work that way. Importantly, the fans are on the outer edge of this, but we're in the void as well because the team's not getting looked after. So let's take it down to the fact it's between the hierarchy of the club. You'd mentioned the sort of ticking order there. And Brendan, are they trying to sicken him? Because
feels like that.
Because to get rid of Brendan just now, you're going to have to give him his wages for the year. Mm-hmm. But it happens in football clubs all around the world that to run the club properly, and if the guy's not staying, either their call or his call, then you have to get a new manager in to manage the team and furnish him with funds to get players. So that's what we're not doing. We're left in this amateur hour void of he's certainly not happy, no matter what he comes out and says at the next press conference. We're not stupid. He's not happy. Because he said after the Rangers game there, I'm pretty confident we'll be getting quality in and da-da-da. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, to be going after somebody with 24 hours to go as amateur around anyway. So that's the situation that the club's been running. I think that Celtic are maybe trying to sicken him and get him to leave. Rather than them running the club properly, it's their job to run the club, not his.
And I think you're completely right, Matt, in one of your points about this. Whether you are a fan who are fully behind Brendan Rodgers or not, it's kind of irrelevant because at the moment he is the guy who's been tasked with being the manager of Celtic Football Club. But the club are, I think, making a fool of him. I've got to be honest with you. And Brendan Rodgers, in managerial terms, is still a fairly young guy. I think he's 52 years of age. He's an ambitious guy, as we all know. He'll have designs on kicking on again, whether he takes a job in Europe or goes back down south or whatever. I think he feels he's still got a lot to offer the game, and I would say he has got a lot to offer the game. But you're in a real-world situation where it's not a smart man that walks away from a £3 million salary, so I don't expect him to do that anytime soon.
We saw that 3 or 4 years ago at Celtic. Things weren't working out. Manager stayed.
Yeah, you're talking about the Neil Lennon situation, and everyone was bawling for Neil Lennon to resign. That's not real life. That's just, I don't know what Neil Lennon was paid at the time, but it'll have been good money. You just can't, you've got families and futures to look out for. You just can't walk from that. But it is certainly on the club. If they decide at that time, if Neil Lennon wasn't the guy, or right now if Brendan Rodgers isn't the guy, well, stop messing about and turn around today in September with the whole season ahead of us and say, we've parted ways with Brendan Rodgers and we've come to mutual agreement, and that's just how football goes. Sometimes we're going in a different direction. But what we've got just now, and my biggest frustration is that we'll stumble on from here till May, and every time Celtic drop a point or lose a game or take a down in Europe, it'll be crisis mode again, and we'll be back to where we did find ourselves during that crazy COVID season. Matt, I've had a couple of folks ask me, even just over the last couple of days, just about the kind of general temperature among Celtic fans. You know, what's the mood in the camp, and do I feel that Celtic fans at this moment in time are angry enough to do anything about it? I don't have the answer to that myself. My gut feeling is there's a lot of anger and frustration just now. It is red hot at this moment in time. Celtic are fortunate in ways that we don't have a home game again till the 27th of September. So naturally by that point, we'll all have cooled down a bit. You know, most of us will have cooled down a bit. But some won't. And I feel it just feels a wee bit different this time around. It feels a bit of a crossroads. Do you feel, you know, from the people you speak to and the people in your Celtic world, do you feel there's enough energy to seriously instigate change or make moves to somehow try and change the way that Celtic are working?
That's an important point. If you go into social media, it's full of people, you know, let's do this, let's do that. But they're not the people that are doing it. They'll say, let's do this, but they won't turn up. Now, I think in any kind of situation where you have to tell the people you're giving money that there's a problem, is you have to demonstrate and let them know your feelings. Now, if you're going to demonstrate to let them know your feelings, you have to do it properly. I think you have to have a leader. I think you have to have a person.
Yeah.
When I was writing the fanzine all those years ago, one of the reasons I started up Celts For Change with the rest of the guys was because I'm writing about it. I felt obliged to do something about it.
Mhm.
That was a big drive for me. People say that the podcasts, the podcast community are the fanzines of today. If they felt strong enough now, the fanzines of today, the podcast today, a flick of a switch can get through to a fan. Back in 93, 94, we had bed sheets. We were spraying paint on them to put messages on them. We were standing in the pouring rain for weeks and months in Kerrydale Street and London Road, handing out leaflets. Hard work, hard miles to get the message over. Today it's easier. You and I are sitting chatting. This will go out. People will read it and hear it rather. And there's loads of great podcasts. There's some brilliant podcasts out there. But maybe the podcast community, being the new fanzine, moving on in the electronic age, if they were to organise something, because they're speaking to fans every day of the week, I would be looking to somebody that's maybe doing that. I'm 71 years of age now, or coming up for 71. But people, you'd have to organise something if they were going to do something. And you have to be identified. You can't be anonymous. I mean, anybody. A person can't be anonymous. It takes a person to stand up and say, I'm going to be the leader. And this is what the aims are. The aims are to have completely non-violent protests outside Celtic Park saying, whatever the chances are, we feel we're not getting treated properly. As a customer, and that's what they treat us, we are customers, whatever you want to look at it. We're fans, but they see we're cash. We're entitled to say this is not good enough, but that needs to be structured. It has to be led by somebody who's putting his head up there, he or she, putting their head up there and saying, I'm leading this group here, I'm talking for these people, this is how we feel. And do it structured, do it properly, and do it in a non-violent way.
And all of that, Matt, is, I'm sure, easier said than done. And you were one of a number of guys at the time that did put your head above the parapet, and it doesn't come without a price. I'm sure you were told to off more times than you care to imagine from your own fans, amongst others, and it's not an easy thing to do, and I don't think anyone thinks it is. But there's a couple of things that fans are asking for at this moment in time, none of which are unreasonable. And I've said this earlier on this week that I don't think Celtic fans by and large are asking the club to sell off the family silverware to put 100 or 80 or even 60 million into the club, but they are asking them to drag themselves up to the modern age and spend the required money, whether that's 20 million, 25 million, across a whole window, not in one player, to try and support the manager. That has not happened. I think Rangers have doubled their spend. We spent about 13, they've spent about 27, which is just bizarre how that's come to be the case. But the two key facets I think fans rightfully want to see more of from the club is a clear vision and strategy. And I'm not saying give away all your tactics and the inner workings of how you negotiate and how you do this, that and the next thing, but give a strategy and a clear kind of map as to where we're going in the next 3, 5, 10 years as a club. So that's something that's lacking badly. And the other thing is just transparency across the board. It seems to be a secret society almost at Celtic, a kind of members club where it's fans paying customers, if you want to use that term, are just kept in the dark and just kept at arm's length. Keep paying your money though, but we'll just keep you there till we need you again for the next merchandise launch or the Europa League packages or the season tickets. At that point, all avenues of communication are magically opened up again. But when the fans really need to hear from the club, and that's right now on the back of that fiasco of a transfer window, this is when fans want and need to hear from the club, and it's radio silence.
Yeah, I think what Celtic fans need right now from the club, as you mentioned, clarity, and we also need direction. What are we doing? Where are we going? How do we get there? Now, we fund the club. Back in the day, I always thought to myself, people said, you never get rid of the old board, never do this, never do that. I thought, really? If you don't have funds to run the club, how do you run it? So the fans are the ultimate power. You guys are today's fanzines, collectively, all the podcasts. We do need clarity and direction. And but if I was to narrow everything down here as to where we are right now, picking up one of your points there, that Brendan is in a really tight position here. First of all, he's got his pride. We all have pride. No, he's got pride as a manager, he's a professional person. When you and I do our job, we like to think, that we do our job properly. And he's got to look at that as well. But he's been dumped into this canyon where he can't go left or right and has to work with one hand behind his back, as in, I'm referring that to the quality of player that he's to work with and expected to win everything. So that's where we need the clarity and direction of the club. As I touched on earlier, clubs all over the world have to dispense with managers at certain times because it's for the betterment of how the club is run. And Celtic are not doing that right now. That, for me, is a big problem. See Jose Mourinho getting sacked the other week there, paid off X amount of millions. I'm afraid that's what happens. But you don't run the club with a guy, he's one hand behind his back, because we're not giving you money because we know you're leaving, but we still expect you to perform. Meanwhile, outside the doors, the people that feed the finance into the club feel terribly hard done to. They feel that they've backed a product, they're getting nothing back for it. Not nothing back, but not what they should be getting back. And this is, who on earth would create a situation of creating anger in amongst your own thing?
Yeah.
Your own world of Celtic. The people that run the club are creating anger amongst the people that support the club. We're here to support you. You're creating anger within us. How the hell does that work in any walk of life?
Yeah, it's an act of self-sabotage, which is just madness in itself. Matt, you spoke about Celts For Change was the vehicle back in the day. We're one of many good Celtic podcasts. Well, others will tell us if we're good, but there aren't many good
excellent
podcasts out there. We're Celts For Change. Is there scope for a spin-off Celts For Exchange somewhere? If someone else can pick that up. Matt, I want to pick up on the thing that is sack the board, as a message, sack the board. It's 3 words, but it carries a lot of weight. And I don't think anyone in 2025 believes that there is such a way to sack a board, but it's more a sentiment. It's more of a saying that was certainly doing the rounds in the early 90s when you guys were doing your thing. But what does that really look like nowadays? Because that's just not how it works. You're a situation in the 90s where Celtic were falling apart at the seams, and there was a real possibility that the old board, to use that term, were on the road out and new power, new management in the shape of Fergus and others could come in. That's not the case just now, and Celtic are very well structured, very well run as a business, not as a football club. So what does sack the board mean to you now? What does that look like now in 2025?
I'm at all the games and I hear it. And it's an easy thing to sing, but a hard thing to sort. Now, back in the day, it was to save the club, and it was obviously a different situation. Situation then was that the people running Celtic had openly said they weren't going to pay the debt. Now, back then, there was an option. Fergus McCann, Willie Hockey, Brian Dempsey. Fergus got over the line first, but all the other people I mentioned, Michael McDonald, Gerard Wisefield, they all had Celtic hearts. So there was various options there to bring in. We were focused to get rid of these people, knowing, because I had met Fergus, I interviewed him one time, and I knew Willie Hockey, and I knew Michael McDonald, Gerard Wisefield, and Brian Dempsey. I knew them all. I knew they had Celtic souls. Now, you can talk to a person for 30 seconds and know that you've got Celtic soul. You can do that. And I knew they all had Celtic souls. So therefore, they were at the back, and you're thinking, we can get rid of them. These are the people that come in. One, you can't sack that board because the way it's structured financially with shares, it's not family members anymore.
Some would argue there's some dynasty stuff going on with.
Yeah, but they're not family. Brothers, sisters, mother, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and there is no option. You sack him, who you bringing in? In 93 and 84, we had all the people I mentioned there, 5 or 6 good Celtic fans, and they're all business types, had money, wanted to see the best for Celtic. Fergus got over the line first. But the rest of the guys I mentioned, they were great Celtic people as well. So you sack the board, and what if an outfit came in from Saudi Arabia? It's just giving an example because I don't know. There isn't right now. There is no option. Nobody knows of another option. If you sack that board, which I don't think you could really do, easy to sing.
Yeah,
a nice wee chant, but it was relative back in the day. It's almost impossible now. So, people are very politically aware these days. Let's say somebody came in from Saudi Arabia. Now, I knew when they came into Newcastle, there was all sorts of fans protesting.
Until they won a trophy.
Until they see big players coming into the club. Just saw the guy the other day, Isaac, 125 million.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where's football going, really? So the principle came out the window. And when things are going well for Celtic, we almost quite like the sort of Irish guy, Dermot Desmond, lording over the rest. We quite like that when things are going well. But things are not going well just now, and he's anonymous, and he has to speak up. But he's not like that. He doesn't turn up at AGMs.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So, yeah, I think his son Ross is now part of the board, and he's the proxy for his father, and he kind of speaks on behalf of the family, I guess. And there's certainly an argument for better the devil, things aren't great at this moment in time. There's no disguising that, but at least we know where we are to an extent. But is that enough for fans? And I wonder if we've reached a point where folks have just had enough. They've had enough of the same old. And I've mentioned several times now that this isn't a brand new thing to happen this window. This is a pattern at Celtic Football Club. This is something that keeps repeating itself for no great reason. As you say, back in the 90s we were skint, so it was fine that you didn't spend money because you can't spend what you've not got. Now we've got the opposite problem. We've got the dough, but inexplicably we're not spending it. Matt, as I said, the reason I wanted to kind of have this kind of fairly short, fairly punchy chat with yourself is because you've been 30 odd years ago where a lot of young-ish Celtic supporters will be now, with a lot of energy, a lot of anger, but a lot of passion about the club. Is there anything they can do? So I'm not advocating here that pitchforks and protests and all that kind of stuff, but what feasibly, if you were 30 years younger, what would you be doing now?
I was 30 years younger.
Think carefully.
30 years ago. How would I handle this situation now? I think, we're living in a different age, an electronic age. I'd mentioned there about contact with fans. Our whole thing back then was to contact fans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was standing in the pouring rain for several months, handing out leaflets, asking people to come to rallies and demonstrations. Celts For Change were the only group, I have to emphasise this, the only group who effected change at Celtic Park.
Okay.
We had over 20 odd meetings. We had every 2 or 3 week meetings at the city halls. We went to Dundalk. We did a meeting on the ferry from Larne to Stranraer, 8 o'clock in the morning, with about 20 Celtic supporters clubs present. So we appealed to the support because they had to understand who we were. So if that was to happen again, it's happening for a different reason, because that was to save the club. But you're talking about how do we protest? Okay, somebody has to stand up who's got great contact with the support. You guys, as in the whole community, have got instant contact with the support. If somebody stands up and says, I think we should have a protest and do this or do that, or we should have a meeting at the City Hall or a meeting in Kerrydale Street to, legitimately say we're unhappy, it has to be done. Somebody has to stand up and say, I am such and such. Mm-hmm. And they have to say, we are unhappy because, I think they have to be quite eloquent. They have to say, we love the club. We don't want to do this. I said entirely right through the whole campaign with Celts For Change. We don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. But you're forcing us to do it because we know there's another option coming in and you guys are going to take us down the road.
And that's exactly where the similarities are now in 2025, Matt. I don't think anybody wants to spend their time moaning about Celtic, greeting about transfer windows, potentially protesting in some way, shape or form by putting up banners or not buying season tickets or match packages or merchandise or anything. Nobody wants any of that. We want to come, and as I say, I don't think it's entitled for any fan of any football club. I mentioned Petershill earlier on, whether you're a Celtic fan or a Petershill fan, I think it's absolutely spot on and okay to want your club to do the best they can with the resources they have. And that's it. Don't spend beyond your means. Don't be doing stupid things. Just do the best you can with what you've got. And that in a nutshell is why Celtic fans are so pissed off right now, because that is not what we're seeing reflected in the behaviour of the club at this moment in time. Final question, Matt, as we get to the end of the piece. Will anything change? There's a lot of anger right now. There's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of ill feeling towards the club. Will anything change, or will this blow over like it often does in Celtic world?
Well, something has to change. That's first thing, because this situation is intolerable. I mean, I actually felt quite stressed the last couple of days. As it was getting near the transfer deadline, I was thinking, might bring in the boy Van der Lecht, seems a decent player, might bring a couple of other players in. And then we saw the way it was handled, and he had another option, and I actually didn't know if he went there, did he? I lost interest at that point.
Yeah.
And I found when the transfer window closed yesterday, this Wednesday, yesterday I felt quite stressed, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I said to myself, I've got a heart problem, so I have to manage myself. And I thought, I care so much about what's going on here, but you're not going to kill me. And I know an awful lot of other fans. People were tweeting me at 1:30 in the morning, Monday night into Tuesday morning, saying, I can't sleep, I'm so upset. Now, people can, have a wee chuckle at that. But that tells you the depth of where people are mentally with the situation just now.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving and not getting. Things have to change. You have to treat us with respect. Why would you want to upset the people in your own castle? Why do you want to do that? Your own soldiers that follow you everywhere. Why do you want to treat them like that? In no other business would it happen. But because we shop in the one supermarket, there's nowhere else to go. We're locked in.
Yeah. And just the final point I would make on it, and I've stressed this in recent weeks, the biggest frustration is that everything that we're seeing and feeling just now is wholly unnecessary. It doesn't have to be this way. Celtic have the resources to operate in a far more effective way than they do so, but for some reason are choosing not to do so, and that's a big frustration. You say there has to be change, Matt. There should be change, but whether there is or not, we'll just need to wait and see.
Well, how can Celtic possibly run the club with their supporters who are genuinely just wanting a good deal for what they give, and they love the club and they're emotionally tied in? How can Celtic carry this on? They can't. Brendan, if we're upset, I mean, I would love 5 minutes with Brendan Rodgers right now to see how he's feeling.
Yeah, I thought you meant for a square go there. I thought you were calling him out, but you mean for a chat about all things Celtic. Matt, I think you used the word intolerable there, and I think that's exactly where it's at. It's interesting times. I appreciate you sharing the voice of experience in your own experiences with unrest at Celtic 30 years ago. I guess we'll just need to watch this space very closely and see where it goes. But Matt, thanks for being here once again on the Celtic Exchange.
Thanks very much, Tino.